So my next chapter, this was my favorite chapter, so I have the most to say about it, so I'll try to be brief. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Choosing a map for this was even, a merry-go-round ride. I just chose the 1949 armistice lines because nobody agrees. So the general narrative that I found in this as I was researching some of the work that's out there is just this overwhelming meta-narrative of hopelessness. It's almost a running joke, what are you going to do, solve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? This is never going to happen. So it's this really hopeless, despairing atmosphere to the conversation. And what I did was I found a couple artists who really explored this alternative narrative of a more hopeful Palestine. Like, what could we do with the pieces that we have? Or, what could Palestine be if we were able to accomplish these things? So I found a couple different artists that I thought really explored that in unique ways. As a slight aside to this, something that was very interesting is a lot of the artists that I'm looking at here are very recent, so there's not a lot written on them, and a lot of what's written on them is on the internet, which is, some of the sources are reliable, most of them contradict each other, so in most cases I was actually just able to get in touch with them via Facebook or Twitter or whatever museum showed their work, and talk with them a little bit about their experiences and their art, which made for a really interesting writing experience. The two theorists that I used to look at her work were Marianne Hirsch, who deals with post-memory, which is essentially the idea that you can be born into a generational memory or trauma from an event that predates your birth. So Majdan Latil is born into the legacy of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
So that's, in some ways, that's her trauma. It seems like what she's trying to work her way through is being post that despair, like trying to envision being out of that despair, right?
Sure.
So isn't that her own trauma?
I definitely think that it is, and I think the way that I've been going about this is not that they would be mutually exclusive, but that
Right.
they would sort of be this conglomeration of traumas, and I think that they would inform each other, because I do think that I do think that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict does have this meta-narrative of despair that predates her, and she's suffering from events that happened long before her birth, and her parents are passing on stories of massacres that they've lived through, that she is then traumatized by via post-memory. That post-memory is not necessarily explicitly what she would be processing in this particular portrait series, but I think that it would be difficult to separate a lived memory from that kind of ongoing generational memory that she experiences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I think if you use it that way, more as sort of her deep background existential position,
Yep.
day one,